is gone.
Yeah, he's gone.
He's sick and he said, I'm gonna take my cold home.
Okay, but Mary has you on her computer in the Zoom meeting, so she does have you up.
Okay.
Alex is on his way back here
Oh, there he is.
All right, I'll stop on my way by.
Alex is also supposedly coming back, maybe. So we're gonna go with Mary's.
Here's everyone.
So Alex comes back, I'd say we go.
Okay, that's fine. And David's, you're on with us, so we'll share with you what we're doing.
I'm gonna turn the camera off because I'm typing minutes, but he can hear.
Is that okay, David? We're gonna shut your camera off so Mary can type minutes, all right?
No problem.
Ooh, echoey.
Okay,
Oh, he's got two up. Oh, here comes Alex.
all right. So do you still hear us, David?
Yes, I can.
Okay. So we'll call this meeting to order.
Take
The
two.
approval of the minutes we'll have to do for next week when we're all able to.
Who's present?
Yeah, so the minutes we'll do next week. Present here now, we have Mary Carney, Mike Mason, the acting town administrator, myself, Joyce Chunglo, Molly Keegan, John Silvestro, and Sally Linowski. And we have on Zoom, David Phil. For new business, we have town administrator Mike Mason here. And questions to be asked and was sent by, I have Colliers, but it's Collins, so. I have that wrong. I don't know where I got Colliers, that was another
Senior center.
senior center. I was close. Anyway, so a bunch of questions were sent by Collins to Mike. And he did answer them, and I thought they were answered very appropriately. Did everybody have a chance to read them?
Very impressed by your motivation and effort.
God, how did we want to, do we want to go through them one by one? And did anybody have any questions on any of them? They all seemed, the answers that Mike gave, I was familiar with, of course, because of my being on the select board for David, did you get the, he is on.
He's on this one.
He's on that one. David, did you get the questions that were sent?
Yes, I did. I had a chance to read them over. I don't really have any questions about the questions.
Okay, so for us that have been on the select board, most of these answers were what I was anticipating, but I wasn't sure about people who had not been on the select board, if they had any questions. I think the one thing I had that I didn't see on here, they had about the hiring process, such as you're going through the hiring process of a town administrator.
Mhm.
So I can use that as an example about how is that process going and how you hired, let's say, headhunters. And so where are you in that process and how did who else do you have involved in that process?
So for the town administrator process specifically, the first step was reaching out to companies that are in our area that actually do this kind of work. And we were looking specifically for companies that hire executive level individuals. There's a lot of, like you call them, headhunter companies that will hire for essentially anyone. You know, from a DPW laborer all the way up to you know, a town administrator or town manager. One of the charging orders that the select board asked of us was to find companies specifically that deal with executives on a.
And you're saying asked of us, who is us?
Me and the procurement person
Did you
specifically.
have
Human
HR
Resources.
involved
Yeah.
in this?
Yep.
Okay,
So HR was basically just coming in as far as her employment at the time. Had she been there for a longer period of time, she probably would have been almost more in charge of the situation.
Okay.
But being that we had just hired her and she was still in the onboarding process, I kind of took the lead on it. So I reached out to MMA and we identified 3 or 4 different companies that do this type of work. We set forth minimum qualifications for hire for this, for this actual job. And then we brought, I believe we invited 3 different companies to come before the select board so the board could ask, a bunch of questions. One of the companies happened to be a company that was used the last time when Carolyn was hired. So they went through that process. The board essentially interviewed these companies. And again, after putting together minimum standards, minimum requirements, we went through the procurement process with each one of them. They were required to provide very specific information as to what they have done in the past. And we identified the one company which fit all of the requirements set forth by the select board. We had to go to town meeting to get the funding to pay for the company. That was passed, thankfully, and once the company got the contract, accepted the contract, we moved forward, and they just started in the last week or so sending. They started with a questionnaire that they forwarded to all department heads in town. It's about, I want to say, 15 or 20 questions. They asked any manner of question about what the department head would like to see with the next town administrator, what qualities would you like for them to have, things like that. So the process is underway, and that was essentially how we identified the company that we're going to go with.
Okay.
And do they have experience with municipal town administrators?
The company that we identified that fit the criteria most specifically, not only has their experience is solely in municipal government, but only executives. They only hire town managers, town administrators, police chiefs, things like that. So they really fit the bill perfectly.
Okay.
And they also had a very strong Western Mass workload from their past, much stronger than the others, which was also one of the specific, minimum qualifications that the board was looking for.
So were those companies brought back to the select board with your recommendation, or how?
We did recommend that one company, but it was a pretty simple process to do that.
I'm out.
Good.
He is muted. Andrew?
Yep, turn your voice back on.
Just want to make sure you can hear us.
Turn your voice back on your computer, because we can see you now. And your video.
Oh, I got my video out because I'm at the school, so.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but I can hear, so.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you. All right, bye.
So yeah, once receiving the charge from the select board as to what they were looking for, it was an easy decision to make that selection for that last company and make the recommendation to the board to hire them. And contract was sent, they signed it, and off we go.
Okay, So it's been a process actually
Yeah.
since you started this because
Well, I mean,
thought
a
we
lot
would
of
be
it,
further along.
I was hoping we'd be further along myself. A lot of the problem is that we didn't have the funding to actually move forward with the project until we got through fall town meeting.
Okay.
So, I was white knuckling that one because, there was some argument from some of the.
So you're
folks
in
town
the
that they didn't
position for a
want to.
while.
Yeah, unfortunately, it will probably be for another few months.
That way.
Like I said, they just started the process. All 3 or 4 of the companies that we looked at gave us anywhere from a 10 to 18 week long process. So none of them were going to be super fast, but
So it'll be their job basically to bring you their final candidates and for you.
no. So what will happen is the first step of the process is interview of department heads, interview of select board members, interview of other government officials, interview of town residents. So what they'll do is they'll start to branch out further. Groups like this will probably hear from them. They'll get names of citizens from select board members or chairs of some of our volunteer committees of, hey, it might be great if you ask this person what they think. And then they'll kind of work it that way, almost like a background check situation. Once they gather all of that information, then what they normally do is they'll start to they'll formulate basically a job description and an ad that they'll put out there for applications. The cool part about companies like this is that they're so well versed in the folks who apply for these types of jobs that they really are kind of headhunters in the aspect that they know who's out there. And so they can kind of, once they have an idea of what we're looking for, they can really kind of say, I think this person out in Central Mass that had been doing this job for this town feels similar. Maybe I can bring them into this. And so they'll start to gather a pool. Once it gets towards the end of the process and they have gathered their pool of candidates, they will eliminate those who they feel aren't quite the best match. And then they'll likely, I'm not sure exactly how this part works, but there will be a creation of a selection committee. So they'll probably come back before the select board and say, we need you to create a selection committee for this process. We'll do the same thing that we do with any other type of committee, like the solar committee or whatever. Put our feelers out, see who's interested. The select board will make the choices of who will be on the committee, and then the company will put these folks in for interviews. So work with the committee to set up an interview process and protocols and go through with it, and then they'll probably narrow it down to anywhere between 1 to 3 candidates. Bring those folks as a final interview potentially before the select board. They'll be interviewed, and then the board will make the ultimate choice.
Totally different than what we did ever before, that's for sure.
Yeah, I mean, it's very.
Gotten more intense.
It is. And
Who you want to sit in that seat.
Would it make sense for the select board to appoint a selection committee ahead of time? They have it ready to go?
I think you'll probably come to that point where.
I think the only it would make sense, but the only reason that it would make sense to wait is because the company will give us direction as to exactly what the composition of the committee would be. So we could certainly ask them to move that part up and do something like that. But we wouldn't want to create the committee just kind of on a whim. We want to wait until they tell us how it should look.
Did you have any other questions on any other things that Mike had given us?
Again, looking at your excellent response to the questions, correct me if I'm wrong, but I get a sense that as things stand now, town business gets done the way it now operates, but with a few tweaks, it could be better. Is that a fair description?
100%. There is a lot of room for improvements in efficiency and workload adjustments. within town government generally, from what I've seen in just a short period of time. Automation of certain things, computerization, digitization of certain things is, I mean, payroll sheets are still being done on paper for a lot of different departments, and people are writing down, how much time off they took and things like that. So, that's actually, interestingly enough, this morning we began budget conversations. So Linda and I are meeting with department heads as they present their budgets. And one of the budgets that we did this morning was human resources. And she has requested a portion of a automated computer system, which would help with any manner of human resources and any manner of payroll and benefits items. And if you purchased the entire system, you could get something, upwards of $70,000-$80,000 for something like this that you would have to buy, but it would run your entire town. She's being very cautious as how she moves forward, so she's basically requesting just enough money to purchase the payroll and benefits portion, which would fully automate payroll for the first time for this town in ever.
Because is she taking over Joan Cisco's job?
She's the human resources director who writes the budget.
Right.
So the replacement for Joan's job was actually, we think we may have identified that person just recently, like in the last couple of days.
What is her title going to be?
Who's that?
Payroll and benefits manager.
Yes.
Benefits manager?
Yep.
Payroll and benefits. manager.
Payroll and benefits manager.
So, but to answer your question, those are things that just right off the top of my head that could be, as far as efficiency goes, could be improved. I was pretty well shocked when I saw that, police department, we've rotated through probably 3 or 4 different automated systems because we kept finding one that was better than the next. And most of them are cheaper than the last one because they get so good at what they do. We've moved to a couple of different systems, and our human resources department is having trouble accepting what we're sending them because they're just not caught up as far as technology goes. So those things right off the bat are things that are they're easy fixes. I know it's always about funding, it's always about money, whether or not you have it, but 100% it's a 100% yes to your question.
Well, and just to add on to that, or I think one of the challenges we've had is we tend to look at everything as an expense as opposed to an investment. And in what Mike is describing is again, that not being critical in any way, but in the past when this sort of automation may have been proposed, immediately it's going to cost how much? No, forget that. Not thinking about the fact that had we invested in it, it would actually be saving money town-wide, and making things better. But it's hard to break that mindset of how much does it cost. And I think we see that at town meeting, right? I mean, we're bringing these individual, and it's not in the context of a bigger picture and the full story being told, because automation oftentimes, when people are worried about us adding staff, sometimes we're adding staff to do an awful lot of busy work that could have been automated.
Right.
So, sorry, I just wanted to say.
That couldn't be more accurate. I've seen it, and almost every time you ask for automation, you ask for technology, the question is, well, do we still need this person or that person, this assistant or that assistant? And had that question been asked initially when the automated system was brought up the first time, we wouldn't have to worry about laying people off or saying we don't need this position anymore, because it never would have been needed to be created. And so we're seeing that now in some of the departments that we're talking about. And it's kind of a shame, and certainly we don't want to go down that road, but if there's just too much value in systems like that. It's to not automate everything as much as you possibly can. is just crazy. I mean, poor Joan, the amount of time that she spends every 2 weeks running the payroll and doing the payroll for this town is,
Mind-boggling.
it's mind-boggling.
Yeah.
It really is.
And we're just wondering, well, who the hell's gonna come in and do that job when it's so antique?
I'm gonna bring her back.
Get her set up. But we're facing the administrator, we're facing Joan, we're facing the assessor leaving, and we're facing the assistant assessor, all retiring at the same time. So the assessors who are elected are in the process of, I hope, of replacing Dan.
He's replaced, Cheryl, yeah, she's, there, she's been training with Dan for the last couple of, well, I think for the last week.
So the assessor
she is-
hired her.
She's been hired and she's not gonna need the amount of, run-up time that we would have expected. She's turnkey, she's good to go, so very experienced.
I'll give you that.
Finding her assistant, Janice Angus's,
Yeah.
Position. That'll be the difficult part, but you know,
And who hires her? Is it the assessors also? Or, because she was used in
this
a
is another.
multi-layer,
She was, and we actually have cleaned that part of it up.
yeah,
So that part has been cleaned up. We've moved and adjusted some of the jobs to make it make more sense. Who's doing what job, so there's no issues with, well, she's gonna do 5 hours worth of work for the
Yeah.
clerk's office and 5 hours worth of work for this.
Yeah.
That's been fixed, for the most part. Who hires that person? To your question, to your point, that's another one of those efficiency questions. I don't know. I don't know if I didn't know that the assessors make the hire. The elected board of assessors make the hire of the principal assessor outside of the, approval, communication with the select board. The select board are the CEOs of the town. I assume that they were the appointing authority for any and all positions that were not directly elected positions. That's not the case. And I believe it's the same with Board of Health, and it's the same with Park and Rec, and it's the same with Library. And to me, that's just,
planning board.
to me, I don't understand. I don't understand that, and I'm still trying to wrap my mind around it. And unfortunately, in strategic planning, you have to have the answers to those questions, and there can be no ambiguity. You have to know who is responsible for what. Otherwise, you can't.
And it's almost like it's a time where, we're looking at the different types of government. Are we looking at not having elected, and please don't anybody take this wrong, but I mean, if we're not having elected assessors, elected health board members, or elected Park and Rec commissioners, just to be appointed and not elected. Do we look at that and changing those positions, so that it falls under one umbrella, not several different umbrellas?
I think it's something that you need to look at, whether or not you make the jump and make the recommendation to make those changes.
The ones that we've really done are the treasurer and the collector.
But when you think about that, does that make more sense the way that it's laid out now?
Yeah.
Well,
And that was probably just as big of a jump as
Oh,
any of
yeah.
the other positions.
Oh, yeah. What do you want to change that for?
yeah, and I think that the easy talking point, I mean, because that really didn't have much resistance at town meeting. It went through very smoothly.
Because it was appropriately told to people why we needed to do that, and not just because we wanted to, but it made more sense that it didn't have to be an elected position.
Yeah, well, and I think, for treasurer and collector, it was an easy story because all you had to say to people, the truth of it was, do you want anybody handling $20 million of the town's money? Right. So when you're dealing with money, I think people can really get their heads wrapped around it. But now you start talking about the town clerk, or you start talking about, the assessors, or I think that's a little bit more removed for people to understand the roles. But I mean, I would certainly argue in all cases, they are critical roles, and you want
And I
a
think
skill
that,
set.
I think that's what we're looking at with this,
And-
with this committee, whether it be a bylaw that we're looking at for a charter. I mean, which way is the town looking to go, and what way do we want to remain and, make changes?
Joyce, I got my 2 cents for you if you don't mind.
What's that?
Fire away.
Go ahead, Dave.
As far as, the question, should we be looking at eliminating those elected positions? I think that the only way to move forward kind of out of I would say the dark ages of town politics is to make those positions so that way they are appointed by the select board or hired by the select board, just like any professional organization. Because although we have great elected people, it still amounts to how do you handle employee issues that are hired by a separate body when, Mike Mason's supposed to be supervising these people that work in town hall, but technically don't report to him. And it's pretty hard to hold people accountable when an elected board or elected officials that maybe stop by, once a month, once every couple of months, are supposed to be supervising the guy or girl. So I think the only way forward, and and it may be difficult, but it's the logical way forward is to eliminate those elected positions.
And it's not that you don't appreciate people running for these positions, and they can very well still be appointed to these positions. It just changes the scope of who's actually overseeing these departments. And I think that's one way of looking at it and changing between elected and appointed, is that you want them to be all the same as everybody else.
Yeah, so
Right.
for any one of the positions that you have that are either directly elected themselves or work under an elected board or committee. All of their benefits come from the town. They're based either upon the town handbook or now union contract. Their wages are set by the select board in most cases because of the union contract and because of the fact that a lot of the positions that are ancillary to town hall are going to follow the benefits package that was determined by the select board. And most of them fall under town policy under the handbook for the most part. And so the select board controls all of those things, but has no authority or oversight on day-to-day for any of those people. And that, to me, just like David was saying, it does not make sense. And I'll go a step further. He said it makes it difficult to have oversight. I would go even a step further. Maybe I wouldn't say impossible, because you could certainly meet with the assessors if you were having an issue with your principal assessor, but it's darn near close to it. And granted, this is because I work in a police department and everyone falls under me. So if one person is doing something I don't want, that's easy to fix. I don't know how to fix some of them. And if there was a problem, I wouldn't know how to fix it. And I want to be clear about that, because Jim Max made a great point when the bylaw committee wanted to, they wrote a bylaw that was passed at town meeting about constables, where they said, they want to make the constable not elected anymore and appointed. And his point was, There's nothing against our current constables. They're great constables. They do a great job. But what if in the future, someone gets elected and they have all the powers of a police officer and none of the training, and they abuse that? There's only one way to get them out. And so the way I see it is right now, this town is super lucky to have not only the elected officials, but also the individuals who work under the elected boards to be some of the most phenomenal employees that work in town, like very lucky. But what if?
Well, and I feel compelled to channel John Allen, who's not here this evening. But I'm betting money if John Allen were here, John would say, and another point to that is the reality is when you go back and you look at our town elections, very few positions are contested races. I mean, there aren't, 5 or 6 people vying to be an assessor or park and rec, sure, we have them on occasion, but for the most part, they're it's like trying to get people. I mean, it's a poll. It's trying to get people to run for public office. So I think this point is we're at the mercy of who is willing to run and the skill set that they bring to the table. And we're always one election away from, something bad happening from the standpoint of getting somebody in who just really isn't qualified.
Has their own agenda too.
Yeah, that or they're just really unqualified.
Voters.
Gee.
Like David said, like David said, you in a professional, what is supposed to be a professional organization, a municipality, a professional organization, without the ability to vet these people and make sure that they have the right skill set, you're putting a big fat question mark up there. Now, granted, like I said, as we stand right now, we're in good shape, but
Well, in the past, and I'm not saying anything negative about anybody, but the makeup of the boards in the past were, not that they were non-educated, but they were local people that took an interest in our town government. I'm not going to say this negatively because most of our farmers, believe it or not, are well educated and have gone to Holy Cross or Northeastern or whatever. I mean, so they have, the degrees behind them, but people with a mindset today don't think that they do. And they actually do have a lot to offer. So, you can't take that into consideration at this point either, just because of what their job is. If you really don't know them. So I mean, years ago, yes, we had Mr. Gronowski from Route 9 that had 8 kids and had the Youngin factory and a few more. My father-in-law owned a garage, was on school committee. He ended up being superintendent for a while because they didn't have anybody there. But I mean, those are the kind of things that happened back in the day. And, but businesses and towns or cities have changed, that they are not just local government. They have become businesses to a sense that you have to almost run them like a business. So I think that's why we're looking at this between bylaws and charters to see what is actually is going to be a fit for this town. And, with all your responses, and not surprised by any of them, to tell you the truth, Mike, thank you very much. But what are your thoughts? Have you thought about any of this bylaw? Or were you going to wait for us to give you some more juice?
you mean the choice between a bylaw and a charter?
Yeah.
I was actually going to say earlier, I had a very brief, like I said, albeit brief discussion with, what's his name? The one that was in charge of
Melvin?
Mel. I wanted to say Bernie, but he's the guy in charge of finding my replacement.
Kubiak?
Yeah, no, different one. When he explained to me the difference between the two, going back to, again, what David said, when you're talking about professionalization of things, you can only go so far in a town this size, right? You can only make so many adjustments. And to me, from what I have seen and from what Mel explained to me, based on towns that have created a charter, I feel like that is the more professionalized way to go. It just feels more organized, like more thought was put into it. And it certainly doesn't, it doesn't mean that things can't ever change or anything like that. But to me, when he explained it to me, I thought it's almost like a no-brainer. Like that's the way to go. I just kind of felt that way.
Good to know.
And, like I said, I don't know what direction you'd want to go with elected folks. And here's the other thing: a lot of the employees who work under the elected boards or committees or wherever they are, it doesn't necessarily mean that they couldn't still exist and there couldn't still be input and communication.
Mm-hmm.
It just means that the ultimate say-so has to fall somewhere, and it can't be, like I said, it can't be ambiguous. That you can't be guessing as to who assigns the benefits or which department has to go through the regular budget process and which ones don't. Which ones can make adjustments to salaries and things like that without communicating. You have a phenomenal superintendent who I had a budgetary, not really a budgetary meeting, but just kind of a financial scratch the surface meeting with her the other day. And she said, we're going to work with you. We know that the school takes up a lot of the budget, and you tell me what you need and we'll do the best we can to make it happen. And I said, that's not how that works.
But she's already done
she's
that.
so great about that.
Yeah.
But that's the law. The law actually says that's how the schools operate. They have a school committee, and this is how they can do their budgets. It's just the way that it works. She is kind enough, and they are kind enough to work with the select board on that. But it's not always like that. It's not like that for every
It's not
department.
normal. It's not normal in a lot of other towns either, or some other departments that are elected and feeling like they need more in their budget than what they should have.
It's a little worrisome being in the position that I'm in right now without a strong financial background, having to make these decisions on the FY26 budget and knowing that there might be some surprises, as we work through these. Some of them are very neat and clean and tidy.
Yeah.
And then other ones I have to worry that something might come out of left field and throw the whole thing out of whack because they just don't need the same.
But then
approval.
that's where we've, I think, been very blessed that we have a good financial team that helps you with making some of these decisions and setting the budget too. So as of years before, David, I think, ate, drank, slept, whatever. He never watched TV. I think he just took the budget home with him every night and he worked on it, 24/7, and just that was his thing and presented the budget. He was pretty much always on about what we had and what we were going to get. But that was him, and other people have lives to live, where you have a family or somebody to take care of. And so I think it makes a difference too now that you have other people that help you with that process. It makes a big decision. So I guess that's where we're at. I think the only other thing, and maybe, I don't know, did you have any chance to speak to department heads? Did we get a department head meeting in there at all? Or not, Molly?
We did have a department head meeting, but I don't
We didn't talk
It
about it.
wasn't focused on this.
Okay.
Yep.
Right, and then the other ones are special act to bylaw and locking in duties, which I think we just kind of touched a little bit on now on what we were feeling that, you know, that we would need to get town meeting and legislative if we change from anything or changing any bylaws or changing to a charter or anything like that, we would have to go through a town meeting to do that.
Yeah, I think one of the things I'd be interested in, I think this is the Collins Center really, input is, you know, just in light of listening to what Mike's sharing tonight as somebody who's, you know, boots on the ground at this point. It's not swirling around and, you know, opinion like, oh, from the outside, I think this. I mean, you're in it. So that balancing act of we don't want to eliminate, you know, or really dampen down community involvement. I mean, that's something that we really, I think, I mean, everybody I've talked to, that's something that's really important and part of Hadley's culture. But so balancing the idea of if we were to go down the path of looking at eliminating the authority, if I can put it that way, of some of these boards in favor of centralizing it with a town manager, strong town administrator, however we accomplish that. But I believe that by law, there are certain boards that must exist, right? I think every town has to have a planning board, right? You can't not have a planning board, not that that conversation's even on the table tonight, but, and I believe though that there are some others, like the assessors and, but I'd like to get a better understanding of, you know, the Mass General Law requires the existence, but what authority do they have to have? Because, and Mel alluded to that at some point at the beginning, and that was a little fuzzy to me. So I'm just wondering if we could get more information from them.
Yeah, I'll make that, Tim. Usually we talk right after this meeting.
Oh, okay.
So
Great.
I'll call him and set up something and have him present. They're telling me that they didn't show tonight because they're limited to 10 to 12 meetings through this whole process. So maybe I'll have them come to the next meeting and chime in on it. And
Do
so
you
that
want to invite department heads? Is that what that part was?
Well, that's-
Did you want to talk?
that's what
to them and
we
survey them?
were talking about having them come.
Or at least get feedback from them about, because again, I mean, and David, Joyce and I, because, you know, we are or have been sitting select board members. There are times where department heads may express frustration about something, right? That whether it's a particular process or in hiring. I remember a conversation with you at one point a long time ago. I think where you were trying to get some people on board and it was getting delayed, and you were like, "This process is ridiculous, Molly." So I think we were trying to draw out from department heads and give them an opportunity to say what they think works really well and what
Of
doesn't.
course, this is now going to be a hard time of the year with starting in the budget and getting ready
Right.
for town meeting. To have them have
Well,
one
you
more
could-
meeting. Do you want to field them? When is your next department head meeting with them?
We haven't scheduled it yet.
Okay.
Yeah. But I don't know that they need to necessarily be here.
Yeah.
But if we could find a mechanism to solicit feedback from them, I'd really like to do that.
Yeah.
And you could survey them, come up with, you know, something like what Collins Center did, but really go down to this 3 or 4 or 5 specific.
Okay, I can ask them to actually do that, the Collins survey for department heads. I'll ask them to do that.
And I agree, like, no more than 5 or 6, something that takes them not a lot of
No
time
more
to
than
do,
5,
so we get good participation.
6 questions.
Because I do imagine that particularly people who are in those positions where they have kind of one foot in and one foot over here, they're probably caught different times between a rock and a hard place. And I can think of instances,
Yeah.
you know, over the years where I've witnessed that happen, where it was difficult for the employees, so. Let's see what they say.
Okay, well, I'll have them do that.
Mike, do you sense from your experience as town administrator that there's an underlying feeling among department heads or employees that centralization and efficiency is a good thing to strive for?
I would say definitely efficiency.
Mhm.
As far as centralization goes, I think it really depends on who you ask. I think if centralization brings about more fairness among staff across the board, whether it be, who has to follow certain policies and procedures, rules and regulations, how their wages are handled, things like that. If centralization brings about more equality when it comes to, like Molly was saying, hiring practices and how all those things work. This department had to wait to bring this person on board. This department didn't, things like that. Then I would say they would certainly be in favor of. But like Molly just pointed out, you do have those individuals who have 1 foot in and 1 foot out, and there are probably times where they really love the fact that they're a little bit separated from the town government, quote unquote, the way things are handled in a municipality, as opposed to a little bit more free, and only having to. David brought it up earlier. Individual work for an elected board who's only in the building once every couple of months, or once a month for a meeting, and no day-to-day oversight. You know what I mean? So that's, I would say, my favorite.
Along those lines of centralization, I think that, although value the feedback from the department heads, you just got to remember that the feedback you may get from some of those elected individuals that are in the building, every couple of months, they're going to say absolutely no way. And we got it a little bit here and there from comments and people when we made the treasurer an appointed position rather than an elected position. Where people were saying, oh, it's just a select board power grab and, it's a control thing and it's this and that. So I think we need to remember that these are all kind of little kingdoms that are run by these elected boards at times. And so a lot of the feedback we may get from those individuals is, nope, there's no way to make it work if they're appointed, or it's not going to function. So we got to keep that in mind as well.
Yeah. One also has to remember, though, that the select board is elected as well. And they're all citizens of the community that they serve. So essentially, centralizing it is making it more simple for the voter to decide how their town is run.
But I always thought, even though being elected, never, because when you put in somebody as yourself or police chief, fire chief, the head positions, even when it's on school committee, the superintendent or anybody else, when you put somebody in those positions, you don't expect to be micromanaging these people. You hire somebody that you feel is going to be responsible for their department. And I always felt that. I mean, I wasn't just going to hire anybody to go into that position, that I felt like I needed to sit in their chair every day and see what the hell they were doing, because that wasn't my job. I don't know. I'm not a police officer. I don't know what it takes to run, but certainly the questions that were asked and the committee that was there was certainly intuitive of what we needed to have as for a police chief. And of course you aced it. So we're very lucky to have it in more ways than one. But I mean, that was always my position over those years, is not putting anybody in a position where I had to sit there and micromanage them, because that wasn't what I wanted.
Well, as I mentioned, I can't overstate this enough. Who you have now in these positions, you're very lucky. But without the vetting process of an appointed individual as opposed to an elected one. You cannot guarantee that they have the skill set, that they don't need to be micromanaged.
This is true.
Not that you can guarantee it any other way, but you can come closer to it.
No, but that's absolutely true. Absolutely.
I
That's
think
why,
there's a national trend in hiring of employees. We don't even focus on degrees anymore, because a degree doesn't guarantee that you have certain skills. So there's a big movement toward people getting certificates that document the achievement of certain skills that are important for the job. Yeah, so,
their personality, what they were, what they did in their life, not necessarily what degrees that they had. What did they do? You know, what was their jobs? And it may not always be what their degree is in.
Yeah, from an equity and inclusion point of view, you know, we look people over, if they don't have the degree, they may have not had the opportunity.
That's right.
To have but have the appropriate skills and interest and dedication. So,
All right, so
Any
any other things you want from us? That you can think
Can you
of?
say anything that you wanted to get across?
Yeah, I mean, I think you can probably get a little bit more that we didn't discuss, that you don't need to hear me ramble on from the questions. As I mentioned in my email to Joyce, bear in mind that, you know, some of those questions are opinion based, and that's just my humble opinion. And it's from a very short period of time of handling these duties. And you may hear, you know, very different things from other people.
You may have been in this position for a short period of time, but you've been in town for long enough to know.
Some of them, sure.
You have worked in this town to know what the process is also. So, I mean, a lot of these
Yeah.
things weren't exactly.
But I think there's value into your thought, into this committee's thought about, you know, bringing department heads on, different department heads, or surveying them.
Yeah. I think bringing them in at this time of the year where we're trying to do budget, but certainly if they could answer a survey and give it back to us, that would be good for our. Yeah.
Yeah.
Filling it out anyway.
Well, maybe they're gonna have to start doing like we had at the hospitals called Chronos, that you just go onto a computer and you log in and sign in. And
It's basically a punch in.
no, it's on the computer.
Well,
Yeah.
but as soon as your computer comes on, that basically is your punch.
punch.
Yeah.
That's
Well, you have to go into this certain
we're doing.
area.
That's what we're
It's called UKG now, so we have to look into that and just, have you done any work previously without signing in? Yeah, and they have to sign that too. Now we're doing the application of are you sick or not, so we're back to that again.
Yeah.
Because COVID's on the ramp. Yeah. So,
Well, thanks for taking the time.
Yeah.
thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate
Thank
it.
you for having me. Okay.
Mhm.
Let me know if you need anything else, and, you know, if you have more written questions, I'll be happy to answer them. Yeah, fire away.
Okay.
I have 5 email address, 4 email addresses that I'm monitoring right now, so you can send it pretty much anywhere and it'll get.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So do we have anything more tonight? Or?
I don't think so. I think that basically covered it. What my questions were on the, it was about the department head meeting, special act to bylaw, locks in the duties, get approval of town meeting and legislature. But those are a lot of things that, you know, we may want to talk again about his responses the next time. You want to cruise that over a little bit more to see if there was anything that we wanted to bring up, and then I'll be talking with Collins Melvin this week. Probably we'll have a conversation to have him come up with a survey for the department heads, and going over with him about what we asked for the MGL, if boards need to have board's authority.
Yeah, just understanding like what legally we
Legally.
have to have in place.
Yeah.
David, did you want to say something?
Oh, nope.
Okay, I just saw you were unmuted, so.
At the
Oh, yeah. Sorry.
last meeting, John Allen kind of volunteered to check with some people he knew in South Hadley to
Oh,
see
yeah,
how
you're right,
happy
he
they
did
were
that.
with the
Yeah.
charter.
Oh.
So I don't know. If it's
So,
something-
He did,
Oh, he did. Oh,
he did.
Yeah.
Um,
I know, something we want to discuss at the next meeting.
Okay,
sure, yeah, he talked to somebody, I think on their select board.
okay.
And he just said to me it was fascinating, like how,
We'll
that
have
they
an
had the
update from
hybrid.
John then.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
So
John
just,
always does his homework.
just a question, if we're gonna be getting input from the department heads, does it make sense to get feedback from the boards? I'm just worried that they will say that they weren't consulted in the process.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Collins Center said that we should
Yeah,
do that, and, you
Yep.
know, the town,
Yeah.
get the whole town involved. with
yeah,
something.
because I think that, you know, they may have similar concerns about the lack of clarity that get in the way of doing their work,
Okay,
or not.
Yep.
so survey for
Definitely.
department heads and other boards. Okay. And they shouldn't have any more than 5 or 6 questions either.
Right.
That should be fine, to boil it down to them too. Okay,
When's our next meeting, boss?
so when would you like to? It looks like if we were looking at 2 weeks from now,
So 23rd?
23rd. Is that it, everybody okay?
I'll really be in Cyprus then, but that's okay, because I was here today, which I was glad to hear, Mike.
Can you zoom from Cyprus?
Possibly, but it's a 6-hour time change, so it would be 2 in the morning, it wouldn't be pretty. Well, I might be completely awake, who knows, right?
Plan on for the 23rd. See how that goes. It's actually almost 5 weeks in January, right?
Yeah.
A long month. Hopefully it gets warmer. All right, and I did need to put into the minutes that Bill left the meeting, so we'll call him absent. Wasn't feeling well.
To adjourn?
So move.
All right, roll call. Mary?
Yes.
Joyce, yes?
Yes.
Molly?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Sam? Alex?
Yes.
Go home.
No.